What's the scariest thing you've ever experienced? Please consider subscribing if you enjoy the video. Taking my wife to the hospital during a postpartum mental breakdown where she knew she'd try to kill herself if left unattended. Knowing that I had no idea when she's be coming home once she admits herself to a psych ward. I am so sorry you and your wife had to go through this. I hope she's okay and back at home safely. Thanks. This was a few years ago. She was back home after a few days and did therapy for a while. When I was at the psych ward, there was another family checking in, a teenage boy and his parents, and seeing the despair in their eyes as their son kept sobbing. I just want to go home. You don't understand what I'm dealing with. I just want to go home. And hearing the dad painfully say, "You're right. We don't know what you're going through. The people here understand and can help you. Your mum and I cannot at home. We don't know how." And seeing the worry and look of failure in that mom's eyes really hit me. I was like 15 when this happened. Heard a whole bunch of scary yelling in the middle of the night. Two big NZ women were holding a man down on my driveway. Turns out they came home to find that he was robbing their house, so they chased him from their house to mine, circa 500 m, and tackled him to the ground. The dude picked the wrong house to rob. As it turns out, the women were ex-prison guards. The dude picked the wrong house to rob. As it turns out, the women were ex-prison guards. Oof, I know the type. They don't take shit either. Nothing worse than constipated ex-prison guards. You picked the wrong house, fool. School going into lockdown due to gun threat. I was outside of the classrooms due to not having a class that period. I tried getting to the closest classroom, which was obviously locked, and couldn't get in. I seriously considered hiding in the trash can. Reminds me of junior year in high school. We had a lockdown in 4th period and everyone thought it was a drill and like the least concerning level 2, so my teacher just locked the door, closed the curtains and all that, and we just worked silently. Dawned on us like 2 minutes later when someone asked, "Isn't like everyone else at lunch though?" Then we realized that the second half of students, 1000 plus, were eating and there was no way in hell the school would ever do a drill in the middle of lunch. I didn't hear anything cause I was on the other side of the school, but my sister was in one of the closest classrooms and her teacher actually broke the drill because he realized it was legit right away and let the door open for kids to come inside. She said all she heard was people screaming for their life and running, because over half of those 1K kids were in the outside dining areas and the inside cafeteria got locked right away. So these kids literally had nowhere to go and just hoped a teacher would open the door. It was like a stampede and a whole mess. Everyone left their backpacks, lunches, etc. Also heard some people jump the fence to get away, because helicopters were seen flying above us, so it made it even more real. After like an hour or so, the lockdown was lifted. Turns out a guy shot some other guy in the leg like a block away from our school in a Walmart parking lot. Although it wasn't that serious in the end, I can't imagine what those kids were imagining being out in the open like that and just looking for someone to let you in while teachers couldn't, because they had already locked the doors. What kind of jackass plan is that for your school? Parents must have been irate. I can't imagine just deciding, "Oh yeah, and those are the expendable ones. Lock the door everybody, I don't even know these kids and I'm mad." Especially if the shooting was a block away, you'd think they'd have some sort of everybody get inside kind of plan. I was a summer camp counselor at a Boy Scout camp a while back, and was a member of the first response team. This meant that when a camper went missing in the swim area, I was among the counselors who were to report for search and rescue duty, which was signaled by the blowing of a massive air raid siren that was clearly audible throughout camp. Well, one day we had the siren go off while I was working at the furthest area away from the waterfront. By the time myself and the other first responders from that area arrived, 8 minutes had elapsed. It was terrifying watching the clock tick down, knowing every minute that passed was an exponentially lower chance of finding the kid alive if he was in the lake. I was sent to dive under the sailboats and check for the kid there while the lifeguards swept the lake bed of the swimming area. Every time I dove under, I wasn't sure if I'd come face to face with a dead kid, and every time I'd come up, the constant wailing of the air raid siren would fill my ears. One lifeguard exhausted herself so thoroughly searching that she didn't have the strength to climb up onto the dock without help. Another rookie lifeguard had a panic attack 12 feet underwater and had to be carried away sobbing. At 10 minutes in we knew it had changed from search and rescue to search and recovery. Nobody can survive that long without oxygen. Still, we searched in the hope that either we found him alive or that he wasn't in the lake at all. The camp policy was to call off the search at 15 minutes and bring in body recovery divers from the fire department. They found the kid in his tent at the 14-minute mark. He had forgotten to sign out from the swimming area. Still, that confusion and terror that we wouldn't be fast enough to save him was all too real. We were given an hour to pull ourselves together before we were expected to be leading sing-alongs at dinner like nothing was wrong to avoid upsetting the kids. Amazing how a simple and small tiny mistake can cause something huge. Kid just be chilling while everyone's panicking. I'm sure with those loud air raid sirens he must have wondered who they were looking for. He must have been like everybody else hoping they find the kid, not knowing he was the kid they were looking for. Biological weather alarm at 2 AM in the Strait of Hormuz on a US naval warship. Fucking hell, I'd never moved so fast or had my heart tremor so hard. False freaking alarm. Belay my last. My first heart attack. Middle of the night. I had just turned 33. My 10-year-old daughter had crawled into bed with me at some point. That was some of the worst pain I've ever experienced. I eventually had a total of 5 in 4 months. Was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer at 41, 9 years ago. My first chemotherapy treatment was scary, but the second was terrifying, because I had answers to all the questions I had before the first one. I knew what was going to happen, but I still had to get up, lace up my shoes, and go do it. Before cancer treatment started, I had to have a port put in, which is a surgical procedure. That's when I found out I needed a larger dose of anesthesia than my weight class. The doctor started cutting and I wasn't under. Then I had a small stroke during one of my chemo treatments and had to be rushed to the ER. After discovering a problem with my port, it had to be removed. But because of the high risk of my throwing a clot, the doctor had to remove the port with no anesthesia. I got one shot of local. The nurse made attempt to cover my face so I couldn't see what was coming, and she knelt down beside of me and told me to look at her and breathe. I have a lot of stories that go something like that. But honestly, the scariest thing that ever happened to me is a story that isn't mine to tell and some others are nobody's business. All is good. Now, by the way, I made it to my 50th birthday. I've had 9 breast, chest surgeries, but just yesterday I did 30 push-ups and planked for 4 minutes. I'm in the middle of my dream of living and working in New York City. As soon as the current unpleasantness subsides, it was all worth it. Best of luck to your dream. My fiance and I were driving down a dark road in Wyoming. It was the middle of December and snow coated every area of the grass. It was absolutely freezing that night, and somewhere around 1 AM, we had a very long drive that night. We were traveling to Texas with a U-Haul trailer attached to the back of the truck. This road had no street lights or gas stations in sight. It was just an endlessly long and dark road. We had the radio on and everything was fine until the truck began spinning uncontrollably on the road. My fiance lost control of the truck and it began flipping down a hill. All I could do was scream out my fiance's name in complete dread. I was terrified and he wasn't making a sound as we flipped. My eyes stayed widely open. I could see the headlights from the truck shining on the snow. I could see dirt and branches becoming mixed in with snow. The loud banging of the truck and U-Haul hitting things and rolling, and the radio still playing an upbeat song were the only things I could hear. I kept my eyes open, kept thinking, maybe this is how I die. I didn't want to die. I was terrified. The truck stopped flipping after what felt like forever. We were now tangled in our seatbelts and sitting on the inside roof part of the truck. To say I was in shock was an understatement. All I could think about was, I need to turn off this radio, so I did. I reached over and I turned the radio off. My fiance asked me if I was okay. I told him I was fine. For whatever reason, I grabbed my phone and wallet and put them in my purse. A now spilled drink which was scattered out amongst other things were in the truck like a tornado had taken place inside of it. Like my half-eaten burger that I was enjoying while we drove, that was now laying out on the dashboard of the truck. The truck, surprisingly, was still running. My fiance unbuckled the two of us so we landed in our seats simultaneously. He tried to open the driver's side door, but after several attempts he told me the door was jammed. Anxiety and panic filled me and I began to hyperventilate. I was so scared that we're trapped in the truck. My fiance told me to cover myself so I buried my face in my knees. He kicked the glass of the driver's side window and he crawled out of the truck. I could feel the sting of the cold air now. I looked up from my knees to see my fiance holding his hand out to me from outside of the truck. I took his hand and I crawled through the now smashed window. The glass scraped my hand and I winced in pain. As soon as I stood up and we made our way up the hill, I saw the awful scene from the accident. The truck was upside down and the U-Haul was right behind it, flipped as well. Unfortunately, I didn't help the situation much, I suppose, because I broke down in tears from the shock and the realization of what had actually just happened. My fiance did everything he could do in that moment to comfort me. I remember how cold and dark it was outside. There wasn't a car or a light in view for miles. My fiance had to go back inside the truck and find his phone. He called 911. I am thankful to say, a couple who just so happened to be coming along the road stopped and let us sit in their heated car while we waited for the EMS and police to arrive. I'll never forget that couple who did that for us. My fiance and I made it out of that car accident without any serious injuries or even a concussion. But that situation was by far the scariest thing that I have ever experienced. Whoa. I was in a car accident several years ago. A girl was texting and driving and smashed into my car as she got onto the freeway. I was stopped in traffic and she drove into me at a high rate of speed. I totally remember that feeling you described. As my car was pushed into other lanes of traffic where cars were doing close to 60, I thought, well, I guess this is how I die. I have no control over this situation. Luckily, I was in a Volvo and it crumpled around me, forming a protective ball. I was barely injured. The people I smashed into had some broken bones, but no one died. I'm still not entirely comfortable driving and seeing cars suddenly stop in front of me can make me panic. How are you guys doing? Do you know what made the truck spin in the first place? Hydroplaning or ice?